Thank you. In his encyclical on the environment and poverty, Pope Francis writes that poet mystics like St. Francis help us to see that an integral ecology calls for openness to categories which transcend the language of mathematics and biology and take us to the heart of what it is to be human. That it cannot be maintained that empirical science provides a complete explanation of life, the interplay of all creatures and the whole of reality. This would be to breach the limits imposed by its own methodology. If we reason only within the confines of the latter, little room would be left for aesthetic sensibility, poetry, or even reason's ability to grasp the ultimate meaning and purpose of things. I would first like to thank Dr. Billups and Dr. Burke for the invitation to be part of what is a historic and international conversation with Pope Francis's encyclical and his addresses yesterday before the US Congress and today before the United Nations, and most importantly, before the young people of the world. I would also like to thank the committee that organized this week-long symposium and the university for its support. And I dedicate this talk to a Lewis alum, English major, and poet, Lucas Bolter, whose sudden and tragic death I just received news of this morning. So if I'm a little shaky, it's not because I'm nervous public speaking. To celebrate his life and the legacy of his poetry, I'd like to start with his poem, The Pale Grass. You are a pendulum. I am the breed of necrophiliac pale women cling to before they utter ghosts in the muddy grass. Then clouds want to tick through dawns, for orange is their transfusion, and I touch no dark. So also I can't permeate green fields. Soon I'll lay aside the boughs of their soaking lungs, the corporeal tick when I climb into that dawn, and have to disembody clouds to flay into fields. Now I'm going to begin, as I had originally planned to begin, with a poem that I shared at the 2014 first-year student convocation. And throughout my talk, indeed, the bulk of my talk, I will share with you additional poems because everyone needs more poetry in their lives. Poetry is healing. It is one answer to the Pope's call for us to take action to heal our planet and its people, especially its poor. As Pope Francis says, in particular, I would like to call attention to those who are the most vulnerable, the young. For many of them, a future filled with countless possibilities beckons, and yet so many others seem disoriented and aimless, trapped in a hopeless maze of violence, abuse, and despair. Their problems are our problems. We cannot avoid them. We need to face them together, to talk about them, and to seek effective solutions. So I begin with the following poem because it addresses our responsibility to you, the students, and then your responsibility to your younger peers and family members. Lies. Telling lies to the young is wrong. Proving to them that lies are true is wrong. Telling them that God's in his heaven and all's well with the world is wrong. The young know what you mean. The young are people. Tell them the difficulties can't be counted, and let them see not only what will be, but see with clarity these present times. Say, obstacles exist, they must encounter. Sorrow happens, hardship happens. The hell with it. Who never knew the price of happiness will not be happy. Forgive no error you recognize. It will repeat itself 100-fold. And afterward, our pupils will not forgive in us what we forgave. This poem from 1952 is by Yevgeny Yevtushenko, a Russian Jewish emigre who began writing under the Stalin dictatorship of the Soviet Union. Protesting the false history of the Holocaust as it was officially taught in the USSR, he wrote the now world-famous poem, Babi Yar, which I assigned once to a class, only to discover that not a single student had bothered to look up what the title meant, even though they, like all of you, were born with Google at your fingertips. You cannot think or act. You cannot think or act globally or locally if you are not intellectually curious and if you do not follow through on those curiosities. In other words, because you have chosen to take advantage of the opportunity of a college education, you have also the opportunity to get a grander perspective in every class you take, probably every day, and through events like this that are offered on campus almost every day. But you have to act on those opportunities. You have to be willing to think differently, to be changed, and then to make positive changes in our world. Yevtushenko risked his life to write poems, to act locally from a global perspective, to be part of the healing of human-made ills. You ought to be willing to risk missing a Facebook post in order to read his poems and other poems, to listen to the Pope and others, to learn the contexts of the difficulties, obstacles, sorrows, hardships, errors, and yes, lies that we all have to face. Telling lies to the young is wrong. Proving to them that lies are true is wrong. Telling them that God's in his heaven and all's well with the world is wrong. The young know what you mean. The young are people. Tell them difficulties can't be counted, and let them see not only what will be, but see with clarity these present times. Say, obstacles exist, they must encounter. Sorrow happens, hardship happens, the hell with it. Who never knew the price of happiness will not be happy. Forgive no error you recognize. It will repeat itself 100-fold. And afterward, our pupils will not forgive in us what we forgave. To understand the price of happiness, we also need to consider grace, or as some call it, luck, fate, chance. That whether we were born, as I was, white and middle class, able-bodied and Christian in the predominantly Christian United States, and into a mostly functional family, or otherwise, we need to acknowledge that we had nothing to do with those benefits, those advantages of our birth, and that even the benefits that our parents, grandparents, and other forebears had derived partly from forces outside their control, regardless of how hard they worked. And yes, they did work hard. In other words, the accidents of their birth also gave them advantages they did not necessarily earn, and advantages that we are not entitled to. The Pope says, in recent centuries, millions of people came to this land to pursue their dream of building a future in freedom. We, the people of this continent, are not fearful of foreigners because most of us were once foreigners. I say this to you as the son of immigrants, knowing that so many of you are also descended from immigrants. In a word, if we want security, let us give them security. If we want life, let us give life. If we want opportunities, let us provide opportunities. Because after all, on any given day, our lives could be otherwise. This is a poem by Jane Kenyon, who died 6 years ago of cancer. Otherwise. I got out of bed on 2 strong legs. It might have been otherwise. I ate cereal, sweet milk, ripe, flawless peach. It might have been otherwise. I took the dog uphill to the birchwood. All morning I did the work that I love. At noon I lay down with my mate. It might have been otherwise. We ate dinner together at a table with silver candlesticks. It might have been otherwise. I slept in a bed, in a room, with paintings on the walls, and planned another day, just like this day. But one day, I know, it will be otherwise. And so we are called to use our advantages and our hard work, not only to benefit ourselves and our children, but also, and more so, to replace lies with truth, to ameliorate the negatives that we individually and collectively have also inherited, to contribute to the healing. And poetry helps us to do this because the power and value of poetry, especially the brief lyric poem, has an ability to teach us to slow down, pay attention, to see and re-see, to recognize interconnectedness, the very skills and habits of mind that are necessary for success in any discipline, in any major, in any career, or in any social activism. Therefore, poetry is necessary and nourishing. It invites us in to explore the most profound human experiences, those that confuse and move us the most: love, death, injustice, selfhood, and the most critical moments of our lives: funerals and breakups, falling in love and weddings, babies, graduations, natural and human-made catastrophes. At all of these events, we call on poetry. It is what we turn to for comfort and joy. Its ability to encapsulate and simultaneously expand both the most profound and the most quotidian of our human experiences in ordinary words made extraordinary, musical, beautiful, and new, transforms our pains into a pleasurable articulation of what we couldn't say for ourselves. You should all enjoy the experience of reading a poem and thinking, yes, that is what I would say if I could speak that eloquently of my own experience. That is, poetry, by using ordinary language, also addresses the ordinary, the everyday, the things that Jane Kenyon just told us could be otherwise. So at this point, I would like to present you with some poems and then, of course, invite you to join me in reading some poems. So please put away any phones, any distractions, anything. I want you to be fully in the presence of this powerful language. I want you to let it wash over you. I want you to be in touch with your breathing, your heart-beating body, and your imagination. Poetry helps us to re-see landscape. I want you to imagine that you grew up in a rural environment beside a beautiful lake, and that you now live in an industrialized neighborhood of a polluted urban city. This is the poem, The Lake Isle of Innisfree, by the British-Irish poet W.B. Yeats. Feel free to close your eyes. I will arise and go now and go to Innisfree, and a small cabin build there of clay and wattles made, 9 bean rows will I have there, and a hive for the honeybee, and live alone in the bee-loud glade. And I shall have some peace there, for peace comes dropping slow, dropping from the vales of morning to where the cricket sings. There midnight's all a glimmer, and noon a purple glow, and evening full of the linnet's wings. I will arise and go now, for always night and day I hear lake water lapping with low sounds by the shore, while I stand on the roadway or on the pavement's gray. I hear it in the deep heart's core. This is a poem by Langston Hughes. Many of you are probably familiar with his work. His poem Harlem, What Happens to a Dream Deferred, I Too Sing America, Cross, just fabulous. If you don't know Langston Hughes, you look him up. But this is a poem called Daybreak in Alabama, and it invites us to re-see race. When I get to be a composer, I'm gonna write me some music about daybreak in Alabama. And I'm gonna put in the purtiest songs, rising out of the ground like a swamp mist and falling out of heaven like soft dew. I'm gonna put some tall trees in it and the scent of pine needles and the smell of red clay after rain and long red necks and poppy-colored faces and big brown arms and the field daisy eyes of black and white, black people. And I'm gonna put white hands and black hands and brown and yellow hands and red clay earth hands in it, touching everybody with kind fingers and touching each other natural as dew in that dawn of music when I get to be a composer and write about daybreak in Alabama. This next poem invites us to re-see the poor, the working, the indigenous. It is by the Chickasaw poet Linda Hogan, and it is called Workday. I go to work, though there are those who are missing today from their homes. I ride the bus, and I do not think of children without food, or how my sisters are chained to prison beds. I go to the university and out for lunch, and listen to the higher-ups tell me all they have read about Indians and how to analyze this poem. They know better than we know ourselves. I ride the bus home and sit behind the bus driver. We talk about the weather and not enough exercise. I do not mention Victor Jara's mutilated hands, or the men next door in exile, or my own family's grief over a lost child. When I get off the bus, I look back at the light in the windows and the heads bent and how the women are all alone in each seat, framed in the windows, and the men are coming home. Then I see them walking on the avenue, the beautiful feet, the perfect legs, even with their spider veins, the broken knees with pins in them, the thighs with their cravings, the pelvis and small back with its soft down, the shoulders which bend forward and forward and forward, protecting the heart from pain. This next poem is by Lee Young Lee, an Asian American, and it is called Immigrant Blues. I think it will invite us to re-see what we think, what we imagine when we hear the word immigrant. People have been trying to kill me since I was born, a man tells his son, trying to explain the wisdom of learning a second tongue. It's an old story from the previous century about my father and me. The same old story from yesterday morning about me and my son. It is called Survival Strategies and the Melancholy of Racial Assimilation. It is called Psychological Paradigms of Displaced Persons. It is called The Child Who'd Rather Play Than Study. Practice until you feel the language inside you, says the man. But what does he know about inside and outside? My father, who was spared nothing in spite of the language he learned. And me, confused about the flesh and the soul, who asked once into a telephone, "Am I inside you?" "You're always inside me," a woman answered. At peace with the body's finitude, at peace with the soul's disregard of space and time. "Am I inside you?" I asked once, lying between her legs, confused about the body and the heart. "If you don't believe you're inside me, you're not," she answered, at peace with the body's greed, at peace with the heart's bewilderment. It is an ancient story from yesterday evening called Patterns of Love in Peoples of Diaspora, called Loss of the Home Place and the Defilement of the Beloved, called I Want to Sing, but I Don't Know Any Songs. All right, don't worry, we're going to end on a happy note. Not just yet, but almost. We're getting very close. So the reason I needed you to move forward is we're going to do a choral reading of this poem by Martín Espada, a Puerto Rican poet and a lawyer, social activist lawyer. Check out his work as well. Check out all of these poets that I've mentioned. So I have to come down. Can you all see this, or should I try to make it larger? Silence means nothing. Larger? Okay. You're going to lose the line breaks, so just ignore that. Let's see. What about that? Is that good? Yeah? So this is what I would like to have us do. This is row 1. I'll take you all into row 1, okay? Número uno now. And then row 2. You see who you are? You 3 are 1. You are 2. Oh, it's kind of kitty corner. No, you're 1. You'll be 2. Okay? 2, 2, 2. And then we have 3. Yes? White shirt to headband and friend beside her. 3. Okay? Where was I? And then all the rest of you all are 4. Okay? So, the poem is in many stanzas, and there are going to be 8 that begin with "This is the year, this is the year," all right? So, the first, number 1, you're going to read the first "This is the year," number 2, the next one, number 3, number 4, and then you all get to do it one more time because there are 8 stanzas. Yeah? All right, and then at the end, we will read the end together. I think it begins with if clause. All right, and I will just scroll. I'm not going to read. I have read many poems already today. You're tired of my voice. So, you read poems out loud, you get them in your body, they will physiologically change you. You're not going to be the same people you were when you came in. That's probably a good thing. All right, are you ready? 1, 2, 3.
This is the year of poverty picked landlords, gazing like admirals from the rail of the roof deck, or levitating hands in praise of steam in the shower. This is the year of shop refugees, court judges who stare at the floor, and their swollen feet as spies are stamped in their position.
We're back to 1.
This is the year of those who swim the border's undertow and shiver in fox colors, are greeted with trumpets and drums at the first railroad crossing on the other side.
Keep going.
This is the year that the food stamps of adolescent mothers are auctioned like golden blooms, and no coin is given to buy machetes for the next banquet of several heads in coffee plantation country.
Everybody. If the abolition of slave manacles began as a vision of hands without manacles, then this is the year. If the shutdown of extermination camps began as imagination of a land without barbed wire or the crematorium, then this is the year. If every rebellion begins with the idea that conquerors on horseback are not many-legged gods, that they too drown if plunged in the river, then this is the year. So may every humiliated mouth, teeth like desecrated headstones, fill with the angels of bread. Very well done, my friends. Oh. And one more. This is the happy note. These 2 poems we're going to read next together, all as a group, are by Gerard Manley Hopkins. See if I can make it bigger. Oh, no, that's the wrong thing. Sorry. He was a Jesuit priest, not a Lasallian, but we like these poems anyway. And he's celebrating the landscape. He's celebrating the creation of whatever force you believe in, and how we should see it more carefully every day and be grateful for its wonder. Let's see. Is that good? Yeah. All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3. The world is charged with the grandeur of God. It will flame out like shining from shook foil. It gathers to a greatness like the ooze of oil crushed. Why do men then now not wreck his rod? Generations have trod, and all is seared with trade, bleared, smeared with toil, and wears man's smudge and shares man's smell. The soil is bare now, nor can foot feel being shod. And for all this, nature is never spent. There lives the dearest freshness deep down things. And though the last lights off the black west went, oh morning, at the browned brink eastward springs, because the Holy Ghost over the bent world broods, with warm breast and with bright wings. All right, and the next one. Glory be to God for dappled things, for skies of couple color as a brinded cow, for rose moles all in stipple upon trout that swim, fresh fire coal, chestnut falls, finch's wings, landscape plotted and pieced, fold, fallow, and plow, and all trades, their gear and tackle and trim. All things counter, original, spare, strange, Whatever is fickle, freckled, who knows how, with swift, slow, sweet, sour, a dazzle dim, he fathers forth whose beauty is past change. Praise him. All right, in closing, I want to return to Yevtushenko's advice. Repeat no error you recognize, and that of the Pope. When the stranger in our midst appeals to you, we must not repeat the sins and errors of the past. We must not be taken aback by the numbers of immigrants seeking their dream here in the U.S., but rather view them as persons, seeing their faces and listening to their stories, the stories in poems like those I've shared with you, like those you can find everywhere, every day. So I encourage you to be alive, be aware, be attentive, be co-passionate, and use the daily bread of poetry to help you be so. And use your being to better care for others, our home, our earth. Thank you.